Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Action Coach here in Birmingham. I do hope you are keeping well. My name is Steve Charman, and we're here for another of our Lunch and Learns this Wednesday lunchtime. It's great to have you with us. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, it's great to have you with us. We are broadcasting both on LinkedIn and also on Facebook. And please do comment, question. If it's your first time, please give us a like. If it's your second time, you've come back for more, you're obviously liking what we do. Please give us a love. Please comment. Please share. And we'd absolutely love to hear where we're reaching this lunchtime. In the past, on these Lunch and Learns, we've gone right over to Canada. We've gone over to France. We've been all around the UK. We're obviously Action Coach Birmingham, but we're part of the Action Coach family. So we just love to know how far we're reaching. For those who are with me on Monday, we've changed our Lunch and Learn slightly this year in 2021. So on Mondays, we're doing more educational based. And on Wednesdays, we're inviting guests to come and talk to us about their journey through the last 12 months, through lockdown in 2020 and through the pandemic, and how they've pivoted and how they've changed the business to not only survive, but to thrive into the future. And I'm really pleased this lunchtime that we've got Paul Painter from Painter Creative. Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks, Stephen.
Good. It's great to have you with us, Paul. And I'm sure you're going to tell us lots about your business in a minute. Just want to check what the correct contact details on the screen for you.
Yes, that's exactly the place to get hold of me if you ever need what we do. So yes,
perfect. So so Paul is a well-known, well-renowned, well-established photographer, and I would absolutely recommend, actually, just going off topic for a minute, but actually go and look at Paul's website with some of the images on there are absolutely stunning. So fully recommend. If nothing else, you just want to take yourself away from what you're doing at the moment, just go and look at some of those images on his website. It will really give you an insight into what he does. But as I say, this lunchtime, this Wednesday, we're here to talk a bit about the journey, Paul, that we've been on. It's been a challenge, hasn't it, over the last 12 months in particular? I mean, business is always a bit of an up and down, a bumpy road at times. We have turns and twists that we don't quite expect. But my goodness, hasn't 2020 knocked us for 6 places?
Very much so. I think it's really funny, actually. You sort of that Facebook feed you get, and you get those sort of reminders of what you were doing this time last year.
Indeed.
One of those pictures came up from New Year's Eve of 2020, and it was like, New Year's 2019. Sorry, and you think there's so much hope of like what the great sort of New Year's going to hold, and then suddenly sort of wallop in March. Suddenly you're receiving all the phone calls that you, as a small business owner, you don't want to receive, which are, we need to postpone this, we need to cancel this, can we push this back 6 months? And you're suddenly there going, oh, what do I do now? That was exciting, I think is probably the wrong word, but I think that's the way you sort of have to term it, isn't it? And it's trying to keep your head clear when everything seems to be going wrong in some ways. You know what I mean? So
and I often think of it as a bit of a leveling of the playing field in some ways. I can't imagine since the end of the war, they were talking about the war yesterday in terms of the impact on the hospitals, but every business in the same industry is at the same point. Everyone is got the same restrictions. It's sort of leveled out that playing field, and dare I say, given some businesses a bit of an opportunity to think differently about how they do things, what they do. And but Paul, before we get into last year, just tell me, just for the benefit of our listeners, and viewers, when did you start your business? What was the starting point for you?
Right. Well, I actually went out on my own in 2004. And previous to that, I'd been working as a photographer for a wedding photography company for a few years. That's where I learned my trade. It's how I learned the business. And I left then and spent a few years shooting weddings and a mix of commercial work. But the commercial work was where my heart lay. It's where I wanted to be, shooting adverts and brochures and that sort of marketing material for people and companies. And so I sort of gradually moved across to that. And what was quite interesting was once we made the final move, which was sort of in early over to the commercial world, that was 2008. And then we all know what happened next.
Yes, indeed.
Again, a lot of the strength I've got sort of had over the last year has come from going through that experience where, because of the sort of sectors that we went to specialise in, or I say specialise in, but we tend to do a lot of work in, should we say, which such as construction and industrial companies. things like recessions tend to hit us a year after normally. So, having the strength to come out of that, obviously, then lots of businesses shut down, lots of things didn't happen. But the plan we put in place, once we sort of got over the initial shock of what was happening, we put a plan in place and came out twice as strong as we went in. So, I've sort of taken a lot of strength from that experience into this year, thinking like, okay, what can we do to, when lots of people are shutting down, or sort of closing in, what can we do to sort of reach out and push harder? And that's very much what's happened here.
You talked about sort of working for somebody else and then starting up on your own. What was a trigger? Why was it you? I mean, there's often various different reasons why business owners sort of step into that world of working for themselves. What was it that sort of were you forced? Was it a choice?
It was it was a choice. I had previously worked in the corporate world, and before I switched to becoming a photographer, and that was like the really big leap. But the guy I went to work for is, great guy. I learned an awful lot from him, but I've never liked working for other people. I think that was the real push. It was always I wanted to paddle my own canoe, basically, and because I've always had that attitude of it's not 9 to 5. It's not like presenteeism. It's the results you get. It's what you do. And if that takes you an hour, so it takes you an hour. Why do I have to look like I'm working for 40 hours? You know what I mean? It's that I've never been that way. And once I had that taste of freedom of working for myself, of, I can make, what I say kind of goes, really, subject to the bank wanting me to pay the mortgage. It's I very much, that's one of the biggest bonuses from my point of view. For other people, I know it's financial or whatever, but for me, it was that freedom of choice. That was the real driver for me. And also from a creative point of view, it was when I was working for. When you're working for somebody else, you do what they say. If they say we want to promote more weddings and less commercial work, then you do that, and that's their prerogative, absolutely. And I wanted my career to go in a different direction, and so that was the real driver in the end to leave. Yeah.
And freedom of choice is something I hear on a regular basis. That's the reason why a lot of business owners are starting and have started their own business. But what was it did you have a sort of a vision of where you'd like to be, perhaps was it 2004 you started, so 17 years ago now? If I'd have said to you back in 2004, where do you want to be in 2021, pandemic aside for a moment, did you have a vision of what it was you wanted and where you wanted to get to?
I did, and it's very different. The reality of where I am is very different from where I thought I wanted to be. Right. But I think as you go through those stages of your career, you begin to realize that the consequences of some of the decisions that you might want to make, and life changes. Like in 2004, I didn't have my 2 younger boys, for example. And one of the things that I thought would be great, and which for enough, my wife Liz and I did for a while, we worked for various travel magazines, and we were flown throughout Europe. When it was easier to travel, stayed in all sorts of wonderful places. We wrote up and photographed all sorts of things. It was fabulous time. But the reality of that life is that you can't be at home with children, and that kind of thing. So
life.
Exactly, things move on. So, and I also thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to be one of these photographers who's going off photographing sort of rock climbers hang cliffs and snowboarders doing whatever they do, and yes, in your mind, it's one of those things. It's the difference between fantasy and reality. And not that was a fantasy, because a lot of people do it, but the reality of that is that you spend 3 or 4 months away every year. And when it comes to those decisions, I was like, no, actually, I want to be at home. That's, I want to be here most of the time. Yeah. So, that's why it's not quite, but I think if you'd offered me the career I have now back in 2004, I'd have grabbed it. Absolutely. No question.
Brilliant. So, no question. So no regrets in that sense, in terms of that decision you made in
Not really.
In 2000.
No, not really. No. Yeah.
And it's
No,
interesting
I
because
mean,
you sort of answered my second question in a way. Because my first question to any business owner when I first talked to them is, why did you start the business? And then my second question is always, how has the journey been? And you sort of alluded to that, but it's not any decision, any vision or plan that we have. It's never quite as straightforward as you think it's going to be, is it? And I alluded to phases and stages of our personal life as well as a business life, and we have to make sure that the two work together.
yeah. Very much so. And I think what's interesting is that it's the ebb and flow of life, that this isn't a paper exercise. This is real life. So things outside of the job affect you, or outside of your business affect you. Of course they do. And so, I remember in the very early days, my very first boss, I used to carry my main camera, quite heavy, as you would expect, proper camera, around with me everywhere. And he kind of laughed and said, yeah, give it a few years, you won't be doing that anymore. And he's kind of right in that, I don't carry the main stuff around anymore. I do have my pocket cameras and stuff. But it's that because a lot of what, like any business, a lot of things, what you do become quite routine in some ways, you know what I mean? And sort of certain types of job are very, it's a standard job. So almost exactly what you're going to do. That's just part of the process. But I think one of the things that I have learned, certainly in the creative industries, is that you've got to keep that spark of ingenuity and inquisitiveness, if you like, of life. You've always got to push yourself. And as you become more skilled at things, those challenges, they change and evolve in ways that in 2004, I had no idea, the challenges that were going to come. And I think even if someone had explained it to me, I'm not sure I could have understood it on any deep level about the challenges that were going to present themselves over the years. So it's yeah.
One of the without wanting to sit here and promote what we do, Action Coach. One of the things I say to all our clients and prospects is I've yet to find a business owner that has gone into business having trained how to run a business. They've gone off and done business and finance. It's usually the passion. It's always the passion that comes first of what they do. The skill, the trade. In your case, photography. Whether whether you're a carpenter, a plumber, whether you're a lawyer, a doctor, whatever it is you're doing, you've learned the skill and the trade first, and then stepped into the business world. And that's what we love doing. Why we love doing what we do. It's about giving the additional support to help build a business around that.
I think that's a really interesting point, because sort of the naivety I had in 2004, I kind of look at it and go like, how did you survive those first few years? Like, how did you make it? I don't know. I can't. I've never really thought about analysing it too deeply, because I don't think there's any real valuable lesson in looking at like how you sort of scramble through something. But it's that my whole life was about being a better photographer, and I thought, if I build it, they'll come. That was my attitude. If I learn how to light things better, or sort the angles out better, or just those sort of incremental steps that you make in any endeavor, I guess, I thought that would make me more valuable to people. And yes, it does, but it doesn't mean to say people will pick up the phone and call you to book you. That's an entirely different thing called the business. And it did take me a while to catch up with that. And I think, like a lot of small businesses, I can only speak to the ones I speak to, but it's like you learn things and you put them in place, and it becomes a bit of a mishmash sometimes. But you do enough of the right things, it tends to work out.
Yeah, it's about having a plan in many ways, isn't it? And just fast forwarding, so this time last year, or the end of 2019, Paul, just describe what the business looked like in terms of the services you offered and sort of the structure before we went into our very first lockdown almost a year ago. So what were you doing and how were you doing it?
Right. What we were doing, because I've worked a lot over the last, at least last 12 years, primarily in the commercial market as a commercial advertising photographer. That was the main part of our business. But what we had been doing as part of the process of keeping yourself, engaged and inspired, was I was setting up a portrait business. So this was that we were going to open up a studio. We were going to have a lot of people. We were going to create a brand that basically took magazine-style portraits for everyday people. So the sort of thing you'd see in Vogue or Vanity Fair or GQ, whatever. We were going to do that for the general public. And there is a big market for it. We looked into it. There's a huge market for it. And so that was where most 90% of our efforts were going in, the marketing, the creating the website, that type of thing, and also doing the photo shoots to show people what we could do and what was possible with everyday people. Obviously, it took us a while to realize just the level. I think like quite a lot of people actually, took us a while to sort of grasp the gravity of the situation as sort of the end of March approached. And I mean, I'd love to say I was one of those people who, instantly pivoted, no issue at all, was properly on it. But I wasn't. I kind of sat there, kind of frozen for a bit, actually, waiting, sort of like, what the hell do we do now? And it took me a while to readjust. If I'm being honest, that's I think, sure, you can say, oh yeah, I was great, I saw it instantly and changed direction. No, I didn't. I didn't think it was going to go on this long. I think thought it'd be a couple of months and we'd be back. So keep marketing that.
Well, you weren't alone there at that time, Paul. Every single business owner I talked to, initially, and ourselves included. I mean, I go back to December, January 2019, 2020. My colleague Glenn was saying, we ought to think about doing some of our work online, seeing if we can reach more people. And I said, oh, no, I don't want to go online. That's not who I am. I want to do things face to face. I like to see the white of people's eyes, and it's all about the relationship face to face. And, within 3 months, we pretty much pivoted the whole business into delivering everything online.
Yes.
So, it wasn't just you in that position. I think there was also a big, degree of uncertainty for us all, wasn't there? In terms of, we didn't quite know how serious this was. We didn't know how long it was going to last. So what was it? What was the first sort of few things you did as we went into lockdown in March last year? What was the, how did you sort of manage that change to begin with?
Well, the first thing was to manage my stress levels, really. And because, I think, some people work very well under severe pressure, and some people don't, and we're all different. And I know that I tend to work better when I'm kind of free of those concerns. It's like the ideas flow. It's almost like the crest of a wave, if you like, and you're kind of on that, when I feel like that, that's when I'm at my very, very best. And so I try to create an environment straight away that was like that. So, it sounds almost like unrelated, but I don't think they are. And I think too often we try and separate things out to our own little sort of silos, but it's all connected. So I sort of started going out, getting a lot fitter, for starters. That was one of the things I did, look after myself a lot more.
Really
just
important.
To try and, sorry?
No, it's really important, sort of physical health. So important. A time of stress and challenge, absolutely.
Absolutely. So, jumped on my bike. I put the Lycra on, which I know some people don't like, but that's the way it is. And I sort of went out and started to, just, lose a bit of weight, get fit, that kind of thing, but also, looking after sleep, that kind of thing. The second thing I did was start to, was basically stay in touch with my client base. And that's a real, that was a big learn from before, because what we'd had done after 2009-10, which is when the recession really hit my business. I've got a cat here. I just need to move her slightly. Sorry. She's just the thing of working from home. There we go. She. We had a thing of things we learned to do. So we had an action plan in place. So should another major recession hit or a major problem hit, here's some guidelines of things to think about straight away. So and we started to I got that out. And we started to work through it. So it was things like not buying any unnecessary nice to have stuff straight away. That was a big thing, because one of the big mistakes we had made was investing quite a lot of camera kit at the beginning of the last recession, which was, again, was a silly move looking back, but such is life. So we just we looked at those sort of things. But the second thing was on the list was stay in touch with every client you have, and don't accept the fact that just don't use it as an excuse not to be in touch with people. It's like, often you'll hear things like, oh, it's August, nobody's around, everyone's on holiday. No, they're not. loads of people are still at work, you know,
Yes, yes.
and very often it's easy to get hold of them at those times. You know, oh, it's Christmas, everyone's winding down. Well, yes, partly true, but equally, you know, they're still there, they're still
Yeah.
available.
I've got another
Yeah.
client of mine who, in a
Yeah.
similar way to you, I suspect, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they provide outdoor fencing. And
Mm.
in lockdown number one, you can imagine all their planned work over the Easter
Yeah.
holidays, et cetera, to go and put people's garden fences up, all had to be postponed. And like you, his key motto was keep in touch. And it's something we talk about a lot here at Action Coach. You know, your existing clients are your raving fans, your prospects. You know, the one thing you want to
Yes.
make sure is that you come out of lockdown is with the same number of contacts and prospects,
Yeah.
clients that you went
Yeah.
in. Anyway, what he did was, being a garden fencer, he went into I think it wasn't home base, it would have been B&Q or one of those stores as they reopened. Or anyway, he bought 100 packs of forget-me-not seeds, and to every client and every prospect he sent a pack of seeds, forget me not, with a little note saying, you know, sorry we couldn't come and work with you, or sorry we couldn't you know, follow up
Yeah.
on the business, but as soon as lockdown ends we'll be out to see you, please don't forget about us, and by the way, here's some seeds to plant in your garden to enjoy your garden during lockdown. And the impact of that was huge, absolutely huge for
That's
him and his
massive.
business.
That's brilliant. I'm
and
writing that one down for myself.
and it's well, and at such little cost. You know, it was something that was very
Yeah.
appropriate, I think, to his business, because he's, you know, he's working
Mm.
in the garden, fencing. But you know, there's all sorts of I call them the critical non-essentials. You know, the things you can do to keep in contact and communicate with your clients and your prospects. It's so important,
Yeah.
particularly at times when we are restricted in many other ways.
Mm.
So I love that. I love the fact, you know, yeah, contacting existing clients, keeping the communication going is really important, isn't it? And the other thing you touched on is about I often talk about postpone and delay, you know, as a strategy. You know, if you're committed to buying something and business changes or we go into lockdown, you know, think about how you can adjust some of those payments, adjust some of those commitments, not necessarily cancel them, but just put them on hold until things change again.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the funny thing is that the things that we didn't cut back on is A, marketing, and B, training. I mean, those two things, we actually ramped them up, funnily enough. And because, you know, I know if you take human nature, generally people, I mean, I might be speaking out of turn, I'm not sure, but my sort of feeling is from talking to people is that people can sort of close in a bit and shut down the wrong things. And one of those being marketing. I certainly know that from the previous recession. You know, a lot of companies did that. And you're thinking, well, here's a massive opportunity. While all your competitors are closing that down, you ramp up. You know, because you're going to come out of this one day. You know, and as long as you survive, which is obviously priority number one. You know, and it's likely that you will. You know, then. You know, you want to come out stronger. And that's what happened to us in the previous recession. We came out a lot stronger than we went in, eventually. That's not to say that there weren't some very, very, very dark days. You know, there were times when we needed a payment to arrive in to be able to pay the bills, you know, and it came down to days, you know, that, you know, nobody's saying it was easy. It wasn't like, oh, you know, it was really bad. And then we did this and it was all great again. You know, that's not how it is, you know, that's not reality. And nor has this year been. I wouldn't say it's been, you know, in some cases easy at all, but having that plan, having even some sort of plan has helped us through, you know. And again, it's partly why I joined Action Coach as well, to make sure we don't slack off, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Yeah. And those of you who've worked with me on workshops and webinars, you may not have heard me say this yet, Paul, but I've always been a Blackadder fan as a young boy and a teenager, and the hero of every episode for me is always Baldrick, you know, because unlike Blackadder, he may have the most stupid of plans, but at least he's thinking and trying to plan for something. He's always got a cunning plan of some kind. It always makes me chuckle, you know, the ideas he comes up with. But I like the fact that he's thinking that way rather than just, you know, sort of panicking completely like Blackadder.
Indeed.
I guess a bit like the fencing company, you know, I guess for you guys, when we went into lockdown back in March last year, one of the biggest challenges would have been getting out and about. You're very much a relationship, you know, location-based business, are you?
Yes, completely location-based. And again, once we sort of decided to stop promoting the portrait business, when it became much more obvious this is not going to be it. This is not quick. There's no quick fix to this problem here, and we switched sort of back to all the commercial work. We focused on the areas that we knew weren't being locked down. So, those places where they have to go to work still. So construction being one, in big industry is another, or even small industry for that matter. It doesn't have to be multi-million turnover companies. And that's where we focused our efforts, staying in touch, just chasing every lead, still qualifying them, watching out for red flags as you do, etc. But equally, not, unfortunately, we have very robust systems here. So, we have a database that manages our opportunities and then the projects once they convert, etc. And so, keep that discipline. I mean, that's something I know I am actually extremely proud of, is the fact that as a business, we very early on started to utilize a database system, and we've maintained it for years. And that, it just rolls and rolls and rolls. So we always know exactly, there's no kidding yourself of, we've got 20 opportunities coming through the door. When you look at it, you know what I mean? You can see it. It's right there in front of you, what's actually going on, and a likelihood of it converting. And so we chased down those sorts of businesses, but also just maintained all those relationships that, we knew wouldn't necessarily lead to anything last year or even this year. But it's worth a phone call. It's worth a little email, a little note, whatever it is, just staying in touch. That's, I'm not saying, and again, we've not been perfect with it. I was, funny enough, after our conversation yesterday, I was thinking, like, well, who haven't I been in touch with? And I wrote down a list of a few clients, thinking I haven't actually spoken to them all last year, and that's my bad. I should have, but I think it's like we said in the beginning, it's doing enough of the right things, really. And we've certainly stayed in touch with a lot of people, just, those that I normally bump into in a more social environment, I haven't necessarily been in touch with, and I should be. So they're already on my priority list.
Yeah, communication is so important. And you touched a bit on marketing, but Paul, in terms of delivery of your business, your services, have you changed what you do and how you deliver it to the customer through lockdown?
Hugely, yes. In fact, I've put a lot of work into that this year. Certainly looking at our systems, sort of going through it from the beginning, we did a lot more work in terms of trying to get people to how they found us. So through SEO, search, etc., through various marketing campaigns that we did through social media and email outreach, and also by sending traditional mail outs, through the post. And it's the funny thing is, people say, well, but nobody's at the office. Yeah, but some don't use that as an excuse. Do you know what I mean? It's like we're trying to reach them in any which way we can. So if they do have to pick up the post and they've got something, well, if everyone else is not sending them stuff, ours is one of the few things that's still there. It's and that has led on to work this year. So we changed that up quite a lot, did a lot more of that type of thing. But then it's how we process things. So we looked at how we when someone, quite often I'll get a call or an email saying how much for a day of how much for a photo shoot, which is a bit like saying, well, how much for a car, how much for a house? It's like, well, it depends. Of course it depends. I think any rational person would realize that. And so how do you get across the differences between what I do and what somebody, say, fresh out of university does? It's not, and there's lots of differences. So what I've done is put together sort of a sales process, which I'd never really had before. And it sounds daft when I look at it now, but, there was, we'd made, most of my work comes through existing relationships or through personal recommendation. And because we were starting to win work a lot more from people who don't know us, or don't know me, that I thought it better to put like a process together. So we've put that together. So now whenever people want to book us, we now have a presentation that we do, that we can move either up or down, depending, make bigger or smaller, depending on the client and what they want. But also,
the great thing about that, Paul, is if they come to talk to you or maybe one of your colleagues or your partner, they're going to get the same experience. If I phone you up today and ask you about a photo shoot, you're going to ask me the same questions. as you are the next
Exactly.
person. If I phone you in 3 weeks' time, and the retailer sector has been doing that for years in mystery shopping to make sure that
Right.
everyone's getting
Yeah.
the same experience, and to help and support retail in doing that, as the people on the shop floor. But
Exactly.
it's so important for us as business owners, isn't it, to make sure
Mm.
we've got a systemized process for
Yeah.
selling, for
Yeah.
converting.
And exactly that. And so now I can now analyze. And I say analyze, it sounds like I sit down there with spreadsheets and stuff. No, I I sit on my sofa and I look through like, well, why did we win that one? Why didn't we win that one? And when we do win and when we do lose, I ask now, why? And sometimes they'll tell you the truth, which is good, and that's very helpful. So and it's helped now, and then you can start to tinker with it, and little bit by little bit make it a better process.
Yeah.
One of the really big things that we've changed is that, kind of like you were saying, obviously this is down to the restrictions, is I don't go and see, I very rarely go and see a client now before a photo shoot, because of the circumstances, obviously. But actually, this has been a huge positive for us, because we now rely much more on modern technology. So people go, oh well, we want you to do a quick factory tour before you come and shoot the stills or the video for us. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Okay, why don't, rather than me going up and spending half a day or a day out, which then increases the cost to them sometimes, it depends on the client. Or they'll often say, oh, pop up for a meeting. You're thinking, well, that might be an hour meeting for you at your offices, but it's a whole day out for me, which you can't really bill if it's a pre-sales meeting, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So we now just, it's like, it's Zoom. And we've actually had this conversation with people. It's like, it's either we do a Zoom call or we bill you for the day. And Zoom is always the option, which is great. And that's something we're definitely taking forward from here on in. And I think we're very lucky, if you can count this as luck, but I think that is going to fundamentally change the way we all do business longer term.
Yes. I mean, on the news yesterday, they were talking about the city centres and what will they look like in a year's time? Is everyone going to rush back into the centre of Birmingham, or are people going to carry on with this flexible working approach and working in a very different way? Ourselves included. Paul, I'm based down here in Kent, and I used to commute up to Birmingham every week, and come into the city centre. It saved a lot of people. A lot of mileage, a lot of time, and we can all be a lot more efficient with how we use our working week. And I am intrigued, and we'll look, keep a close eye on how things change and develop. But you've touched on one example there of what you'll continue to do differently. Is there anything else you'll continue to deliver in the same way, or any sort of what I call BFOs, blinding flashes of the obvious, but things actually that you either hadn't got round to doing and you're now doing and will continue, or things that you think, that is so simple, why didn't I do that before? It's taken a pandemic and a lockdown to put me under pressure to do that. What is it that I guess let me summarize that. What have been your key learnings from where we, the experience of the last 12 months, and what you're going to carry on with?
Yeah. Key learnings is accept who you are. I have big strengths and huge areas of weakness. I'm very aware of those. Yeah, and I think it's accepting that and not beating the hell out of myself for not being good at a particular part. And so I've actually relied on learned to actually rely on other people to kind of to do some of those tasks. Accountants stuff, for example, I've leaned on my accountant much more heavily this last 12 months to help me through various things, and outsourced it, and although it's cost obviously, but actually it's those minor tasks that I'm not that good at, let someone else do them, and let me focus on the bits that I can do very, very well. That's and that's a continual learn. It's something that I sort of learn and then forget and then relearn. But I think our sales process, definitely keeping this now and constantly improving those systems for sure. That's a big step forward. It's something I've never really had that sort of written out process before. It's always been in my head, but now it's and also, again. But there's two things actually that I think are very important. One is don't ignore the red flags when they come. when you're talking to new clients, because, and have them written down. These are our red flags, and that's what I've done. Yeah. And, you're generally right. I'm very willing to give people the benefit of the doubt, but it's, you approach cautiously when the flags are flying. And the other one I can't remember now because I've spoken about that. But hey, I'll remember in a minute.
No, I love what you're saying about know what you're good at and don't beat yourself up. Here at Action Coach we talk. Well, I personally as a coach talk about skills and thrills. If you don't have the skill and don't get the thrill, it's something you should be doing yourself, or could you be better off both financially and time wise passing it on to somebody else? It's really important, and I think lockdown has given us all that opportunity just to reflect on where our skills and where our passion lies. What is it we're trying to achieve through our business? And before we went into lockdown last March, many business owners like yourself, Paul, I would phone up and they would say, I just haven't got time to have that conversation with you. I'm too busy. And lockdown has given us the opportunity to reflect, hasn't it, on where we are as a business, what it is we're trying to achieve, and what we can do differently, and how we can make ourselves more efficient. Because ultimately, Paul, you are the head of finance, you are the head of HR, you're the head of delivery, the head of photography, the head of most aspects of your business. Depending on who you've got working with you, it's about making sure we can look at our business in every aspect, systemize where we need to, communicate the best we can. What we haven't really touched on, Paul, we've got a few minutes if you want to, is just how photography has influenced and changed how business in the wider sector is operating, particularly around marketing. We've all gone into this virtual world. Have you seen a change or a demand in your services for sort of online, for photography and videography services for people to promote their business?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot of stuff that we can't do, or in certain times of the year, when lockdown fully hits, you can't, you shouldn't be doing certain types of work. But what we're noticing is, what you've got to bear in mind is now, people's first impression of your business is what they see on your website or a bit of marketing that comes out. And if it's bland, if it's very nobody's gonna, or very few people are gonna look unless they are already into you for some reason or other. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so that visual impact has become very much more important. So, for example, doing, when we've been allowed to, doing for the smaller business, like the personal branding type photo shoots. So where it's very much more about the owner of that business, and they are the personality, and showing them off in a way that can really connect with their clients. No longer, I put it like this, even in normal times, the PR shot of two people stood in front of a widget or whatever, and they're shaking hands and looking at the camera. The only two people who actually genuinely care about that picture are the two people in it. That's it.
It reminds me when I worked in the
nobody cares.
No, it reminds me when I worked in the charitable sector, and all you ever saw in the paper was the check handover. Classic example.
Exactly. It's lovely for the people in the shop, and I get that, and maybe that is the point, and I maybe I just don't get that. But I think if you're using it as a promotional activity, you need to do better than that. You need to do a lot better than that, because some of your competitors will be, and they're putting you to shame. One of the big things in one of the sectors that I do a lot of work in, the construction sector, is that I would hear a lot that, oh well, but I know everybody. No, you don't. you think you know everybody, because everybody you meet them at the socials or whatever, etc. You don't know everybody in your sector, and not everybody is that necessarily impressed by what they see, and then often you'll get the things, oh, it always comes down to price.
Yeah.
Well, if that was true, then everybody would buy a Skoda, or whatever it is. You know what I mean? I like these statements. They're sort of, they become almost a cliche, but they're not necessarily
true. Absolutely. We don't know what we don't know. And one of the things getting towards the end of our time, but one of the things many of my clients and contacts I've been talking to about is about the importance of taking people on the journey right now, particularly with the pandemic where it is. There's a very delicate stage. We need to be reassuring people, our clients, our prospects, our customers, on what
Absolutely.
steps we're taking as whatever
Yeah.
business, whatever industry.
Yeah.
And photography and videography is a great way to do that, isn't it?
It is very much so. I mean, I think if it sort of, if you wanted to condense it down to sort of one ideal tip, no matter, you know, whether someone books professional or not, or they do it themselves, you know, is being authentic is critical. And don't take that to mean that any old rubbish will do, because it won't do. You know, and you will, you know, people do judge you on what they see. You know, if that's not true, why don't you buy a product on Amazon where there's no pictures? You don't, because you don't trust it. You know, think about your own behavior. You know, if it's a rubbish picture on one site and a good one on the other, they can be the same price, the same product. You'll always buy the one with the better picture. That's just human behavior. So, but being authentic, you know, don't be, you know, people want to hear real stories, you know. Very quick example, like, you know, again, I can just reference this back to the 2008 recession, is that, you know, you'd ask people, how's it going? And everyone go, oh yeah, it's great, it's awesome, we're doing really well, we've got loads of stuff. You'd ask them 6 years later and they go, God, we were right, we were almost down and out. You know, it's like, well, there's that kind of false positivity that, you know, it's like, you know, people see through it. And especially in, you know, if you're telling stories on video or whatever, people want to hear, they want to hear the stories. They want to hear how these things came about. They want to hear the planning and how you got to that point. Do you know what I mean? You know, not in endless detail. That's where there's like myself get involved, you know.
Which is why we're here today, because I'm hoping that people want to hear about what we've been doing, both myself and yourself in our respective organisations, and hear the journey, because I'm sure every single experience of every person we speak to on these lunch and learns will have a different take. We're on a very, I think what I keep reminding myself is we're on a very personal journey with this pandemic, both within our personal lives and in our work, whatever organisation industry we're working in. So it's what can we learn from each other, and how can we support each other as we go through the next phase of this pandemic, and who knows what comes next. I think the biggest lesson I've learned, and many of the clients I work with, is about, you know, being prepared to change and planning for change. You know, we don't know what's going to happen in the next few months, and making sure that we are almost on high alert and be as flexible as we can, Paul.
Definitely. I think, you know, I think having a plan is critical for any business. I think being so, I can't think of the right word, but where that's all I'm focused on. I'm not looking, I'm just going to do this. You could then miss all the other stuff that, you know, you need to look up occasionally. You need to be flexible, like you said. You know, you need to be able to adjust and react as much as be proactive. You know, so it's because new opportunities are out there. You know, we're seeing them. You know, as more and more people are taking their products online, they need photography. You know, etc. You know, if the only way they get across their stories is they need, you know, they need people like me. You know, we're looking out for that. You know, a business that would ordinarily never really have been online, you know, in a meaningful way. You know, and if we just stuck to our plan of like, we're just doing portraits, that's it. You know, that's kind of, you know, no, that was our plan, but no, we sort of adjusted. You know, we'll come back to that. There'll be a time. You know, it'll happen. It's just not right now.
And just to finish off, Paul, I mean, you've talked a bit about the journey people have been going on and how you can help, but this is really just an opportunity for, you know, a shameless plug, as I call it. You know, what is it you can help people with now? You've been very gracious and kind in joining us this lunchtime, so I just want to give you the opportunity to have, you know, sort of a little sales pitch, or a shameless plug. What is it you help with? How can people engage with you? What is it? What does that process look like? You talked about your sales process. What's the first step of that?
The first step is to see whether we're right for you as a business. So, for example, the first thing to do is go to my website. So, first plug, it's paulpainter.co.uk. That's where to go, and you can see the sort of work that we produce. Now, for example, if you're sort of a high fashion clothing manufacturer, you happen to be on this call, I'm not your guy. You know, I don't do that. But you know, if you're more sort of commercial based, business to business, you know, you're a professional service or construction industrial, we're an absolute perfect fit for you. That's exactly what we do. So, you know, that's the first thing, is to check, are we in the right market for you? After that, you know, if you've got you're thinking about a project, you know, you might even just be early stages. just drop us an email or drop me a phone call, and perhaps we can punch in a little idea or two that might help take it a step forward. And then as you go forward, we'll work with you to to create something that's actually useful. And I think that's the difference. What I don't do is make pretty pictures. What I do is make photographs and films that are actually going to be attractive to the people who buy whatever it is you do. And that's a very, very important distinction. And I think it's one that's often missed in what we do. You'll often see on this go, oh, that's nice. Great, so it's got 1,000 likes. Did anyone buy anything? Most of the time, no. They just thought it was nice. And what I do is create stuff that helps you sell what you do or helps you maintain customers. There's various different elements to how you can use what I do. And I think that's a critical difference between, oh, that's a nice picture and that's a picture that'll actually do something for your business. So
brilliant.
That's
Thank
me.
you, Paul. So just to avoid any confusion, we've got Paul at Painter Creative. That's your portrait website, isn't it? paintercreative.co.uk, but your other website is paulpainter.co.uk. Is that
okay,
right?
No, let me explain. Yeah, my commercials business is paulpainter.co.uk.
Right.
That's fine. I do have a portrait business. It's called completely different. Shall I promote that? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Whatever you like. Yes.
I do have a portrait business that's online right now. And it's called Amara Portraits. So AMARA portraits.co.uk. That's all very much more beauty and sort of individual type, sort of more, the Vanity Fair glamorous type pictures that we do.
Right. So not for me. Not for me. So,
very much for you. You'd be very surprised. You'd be very surprised.
You get those lights bouncing off my head, Paul. But paulpainter.co.uk is the website.
That's the main. Yeah, that's the commercial one. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Paul's email address is on the screen there, along with your mobile phone number. So, I mean, I would suggest pick up the phone, give Paul a call. And as you say, Paul, you can just sound and bounce some ideas around and start that conversation going.
Be delighted to. Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. And just before we finish, so obviously you're here talking to us here at Action Coach. We are absolutely keen to support and engage with as many business owners as we can right now. And if you're listening to us either on LinkedIn, on Facebook, or on the Zoom platform this lunchtime, please do contact us. We'd love to give you a free coaching session. We'd love to invite you to our free 6 steps health check. We've got these lunch and learns, as I said at the beginning of this session today, on a Monday, more educational based, on a Wednesday. Not that today hasn't been educational, but more of a conversation with business owners to talk about and learn from the journeys that you out there in the business community in Birmingham have been going through over the last 12 months and what we can take from that to plan and go forward. I think this would be some really great tips today. Paul, we talked about postponing, we've talked about contacting existing clients, we've talked about how you've pivoted your business using Zoom and your sales process, some really great things that we can all take away from that. And if you think that's the sort of thing you want to find out more about, then please do talk to us about our 30X program, which Paul is just starting. And it's 30 videos over as long or as short a time as you like. Includes a 90-day planning workshop, accountability. I'll be on your back to ask you what you're doing, when you're doing it. But most of all, if you want to find out about what coaching is all about, then please do communicate with us here at Action Coach, either on Facebook, LinkedIn, or go to our website as well. But I'm just going to put Paul's website because that's really important. So paulpainter.co.uk is the one to go to if you just want, as I said, both for communication with Paul about how he can support your business, but if you just want to see some excellent, really inspiring images, then do go onto his website and have a look. Paul, I really do appreciate you joining us this lunchtime. It's great to have that contact and that communication with you, the conversation. Anything else you want to add, Paul, just before we finish?
No, I'm really enjoying it.
Put you on the spot.
Lovely to have a conversation. And,
I do hope you'll come back in a few months' time when we're out of lockdown. You can tell us what you've been doing over the next few months and how you've taken your business back into the new norm that we're all looking forward to. What I would just say to finish off is Tiger Woods, renowned for saying, no matter how tough you think you are, and Paul, you've alluded to this, and I would agree completely. We need to make sure we're not on our own and look out and see what we can support, what support we can get out there. So, please do, you don't know what you don't know. Going back to what you were saying earlier on, Paul, we think we know it, or we think we know everyone, but we don't necessarily. So it's about, making sure we reflect and learn every single day. Every day is a learning opportunity. So for all of you on our Lunch and Learn webinar this lunchtime, thank you so much. Thank you to you, Paul. It's been great having you with us. We'll be back here on Monday.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's great having you with us, Paul. And say hello to the cat and the family. And for everyone else, stay well, stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you again Monday lunchtime at 12. Take care and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.